Attack!
Yow! What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm eXtine. Welcome to another edition of the Yow Vlog. Today we are looking at ESEA Season 10, which is about to start next week. Super excited about that. I'm going to split my preview into two sections so that those of you who are really interested in this, I can delve into it and break it all down for you. And then those of you that just want to hear about the teams and where players are and what's happening with the teams, we can save that for our second part. This part is just going to look at unlocked weapons and what is allowed this season. So, killing the admin for ESEA TF2, he put out, this was how the bans were decided this season, he put out inquiries with the teams, the surviving teams from Invite, talked to them, and he formed up a list of 7 people before one of the teams decided not to be involved, and then came up with 6 people who were team captains who were representing the opinions of their teams who voted on the issue. I am glad that ESEA is, I don't know, changing things up a little bit and making a different procedure. They're trying to figure out a newer procedure on how to deal with these issues. I think asking the team captains is a pretty good idea. However, I wish that we would have at least had some representatives from intermediate and from open, at least like one team each, as well as, you know, people being, I don't know, just put out there, you know, of, hey, let's talk about it, let's discuss it. I think that often, or at least in this circumstance, some decisions are being made and then we're talking about it. And so it's like, come on, like, at least if you're not going to directly take our input, at least put it out there that you are going to start processing this and say, hey, please leave your thoughts on these items. So the players voted on them. There were some close calls. There were some that I was kind of sad were banned, but you know, the process is what the process is. Yeah, and that's how it goes. So real quick, I'm just going to run down from top to bottom the list of weapons that are banned. Of course, you know, if there's any new weapons that have come out since I make this, you know, or Halloween doesn't have any new items that are crazy. You know, if there's new items that come out mid-season, those are just going to be banned just on principle since they're so new. But this list should be up to date in those regards. So the banned weapons are the Soda Popper, Bonk, Mad Milk, Sandman, Atomizer. For Soldier, Liberty Launcher, Cow Mangler, Reserve Shooter, Righteous Bison, Battalion's Backup, Disciplinary Action. Demo Man is Lock and Load, Persian Persuader, Ullapool Caber. Heavy Man is Natasha, Brass Beast, Tomislav, Buffalo Steak Sandwich, Gloves Are Running Urgently, Fists of Steel. Engineer has Wrangler, Short Circuit, Gunslinger, Frontier Justice, Jag, bands. Spy has the Enforce. Sorry, actually, still a couple more to go through. The Medic is Vitasaw, Solemn Vow. The Vitasaw then, you know, removes the sorry, maybe I'm confusing myself. I have to double check to see what the crossbow set bonus is, but I believe all set bonuses are banned. So the Vitasaw and then the Solemn Vow banned. Sydney Sleeper for the Sniper, as well as the Machina and the Jarate. And then Spy only has the Enforcer banned. So let's also, you know, then break over some of, you know, what was not banned that is interesting and perhaps troublesome. Then I'll also go into some of you know, what was going on with the votes of what was Tiebreak, because they did have 6 captains voting, and the killing in the name of was the tiebreaker vote. So, and then also there was a couple that were close calls that I want to talk about, and then we'll also get into some of the items that I felt, you know, shouldn't have been banned or that I'm disappointed were banned. Not banned, which players have definitely pointed out as soon as they kind of realized it, that was definitely probably going to be trouble. The Criticola is not banned, which is a weird item, and, you know, I would not like it to be in there anyways. But particularly what makes it troublesome is that the shortstop was not banned as well. And the shortstop, I think, is a good weapon. It's an interesting weapon. It's a bit of a different vibe for a scout, and I'm in favor of that. I've always been in favor of it since the Force of Nature came out. You know, some people thought that the Force of Nature was overpowered, and there were some glitches in it, you know, where you could pop a medic up in place and keep the medic locked in a location. So he's really easy to hit again. But once that was fixed, you know, I really felt that, you know, it gives the scout different options. Even if it's slightly better in some regards, it's worse in other regards. And even if, you know, a lot of the high-level scouts end up switching to it, at least that's, you know, it's something new, it's something fresh. You know, scouts have a different, it's kind of an upgrade, a buff that's come out. But, you know, other classes have gotten other buffs. But when combined with the Criticola, the shortstop can do, you know, 43 damage shots from across the bridge at Badlands. I saw a clip that Neo Russia put up, big ups to him for producing the clip, of, you know, drinking a Criticola and then just standing over there and pew 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 and loading up the other demo man with damage, you know, from halfway across the map. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, but at least from all the way across the middle point. You know, and that's just kind of disgusting, not really the role of what was meant to be in place there. So we'll see how that works out, if that gets really abused, or you know, if scouts just choose not to go that route because they prefer the scattergun. Who knows? We'll see. Another one that is not banned, but is kind of interesting, is the Widowmaker, which was buffed by Valve recently when they changed the amount of metal needed per shot from 60 to 30. What I mean from that is that the Widowmaker uses up metal every time that it shoots, but you get the metal back as you do damage. And that is really interesting. It creates some cool dynamics. You know, having it be 30 metal, that means you just have to do 30 damage and then you get your ammo back. So if you're doing 40 damage, you're making metal, and if you're hitting 30, you don't have to reload. You can just keep shooting people, keep shooting people. Obviously, though, that weapon also has a very big downside in the fact that you're an engineer. Using your metal is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go around, you're supposed to drop sentries, you're supposed to drop dispensers and upgrade them. And if you can't, you know, upgrade, or well, I guess if you can't, you know, if you drop a dispenser, you can't stand there and hit it to 100 and then run off to go get an ammo pack. Because if you do that, you're only going to have your pistol to defend yourself. So it's really, you got to invest 100 at a time. And also, if you only have 100 metal, that means that you only have 3 shots in your main shotgun. Of course, if you nail those, you get more ammo back. But for every shot you miss, I mean, it's basically you only have 3 missed shots, unless you're doing really fat damage and making up a lot of metal. So it's a risk and a reward weapon, and I'm really excited that that's not banned, and it's almost too risky. And going back, I'll go back to some of the other engineer bans that were kind of interesting and worth talking about for a while. Also, what was Tiebreak? Let's go over this list real quick. So these are the items that Killing decided whether we used or not, since it was a 3-3 tie, whether to ban it or not. The Soda Popper, I agree with that. It's a risk-reward item in some senses. You know, it doesn't do as much damage even as the Force of Nature. But it's kind of abusable in the sense because you can run around, you can build up your hype meter, which is fun. I wish it was in the game just for that. But you can build up your hype meter, and then you can switch to your pistol, and then you can go to ambush the medic, switch back to your Soda Popper, and all of a sudden you have crits. And that's kind of a little not cool, and able to be abused. Battalion Backup was tie-breaked, and I think Killing took that decision because he didn't want it become a problem like it was before, but you know, the way that the charge works, I don't think it would be a problem. Righteous Bison is banned, which I find unfortunate because that's a decent counter to a Pyro and his Air Blast, but also Righteous Bison is kind of terrible. Excuse me. Yeah, Righteous Bison is good in groups. I've seen some people use it on Highlander. I've tried to use it on Highlander. I think it can be good for Highlander because there's always a Pyro, because there's groups of players. I would use it on Highlander on a payload map where you know people are going to be grouped around the cart because the projectile goes through people. So if you hit 4 people, you're doing a ton of damage. But if it's in a one-on-one situation, I would much rather have my shotgun. Persian Persuader was tiebreak ban. I mean, that whole set gets kind of abusive when you have it all the way on, especially if you're using the turn script, where you can use left or right and you can turn much better. So yeah, I don't mind that ban. Brass Beast is banned, which I still kind of feel that I personally feel that all the heavy weapons, except for maybe the Tomislav, because they did not nerf it like they had in the beta. I feel like all those guns are balanced. So, you know, he banned the Brass Beast. Frontier Justice is banned, which is a ban that I am alright on and in favor of, only because there's no way for you to see whether an engineer walking around with a pistol has a crit stored on their Frontier Justice. Also, well, I'll get back to it. I want to talk about Frontier Justice again when we move down to the discussing some of the other bans. Machina is banned, and you know, there was a long discussion on natf2.com about these weapon bans, and the Machina was a big one that was brought up. I think Bloodsire in the end was kind of arguing for its inclusion because it does have kind of this niche factor where you can get multiple kills. It also calls out your hiding spot immediately and very clearly, and then you can't no-scope with it. So the no-scope is a big part of, you know, a sniper's game. You know, hitting with a big damage shot, you don't kill someone, you no-scope them immediately afterwards. So that's a little too bad. I mean, I think it's kind of a situational weapon, or, you know, some people might choose to use it, but it does have its disadvantages. And then the Enforcer was banned as well. And I think the Enforcer is pretty powerful in pub servers, you know, where you can get random crits, and then the Enforcer's one-shotting people. I think that a lot of the pros like to use the Ambassador because you get those headshots, which is definitely awesome. And, you know, the slower cloak time of the Enforcer is trouble for spies. Close calls, these are weapons that barely won on a 4-2 vote. Atomizer, or sorry, barely got banned. Atomizer is one of those, and Atomizer, you know, the players feel that it's a buff to the scouts, and I think that one of the problems with the Atomizer is you can't tell whether or not the scout is using it or not until they have their second jump, and so then that, you know, you can see that they're going to have another jump or they've made their decision. But when you I think that they should change it so that on your very first jump, it has that purple effect. Because if you can see even immediately that the scout could potentially jump another time, you have to wait on your rocket. And I think that just deepens the game. Sure, it's a buff to scouts, but, you know, you also are going to have those situations where a scout accidentally kills themselves by doing that last bit of 10 damage. You know, it is a bit of a safety net to the scouts and stuff, but other classes have had their improvements as this game has evolved and stuff. And game is about the scouts quite a bit, and I don't really see a problem using it. I use it a lot, actually. I use it in lobbies, and it also gives you extra mobility, a little bit of ease on some of the jumps, and also, you know, you get that problem sometimes where you are trying to jump before you get to a ledge, and then you actually fall off the ledge, and then you jump, and you're expecting to be able to double jump, and you only get the one jump. Atomizer kind of saves your ass in that situation. It costs you 10 health, but yeah. So hopefully, you know, maybe in future seasons we'll see that. There was also some thoughts from some of the players said, well, if the Liberty Launcher gets banned, then I want to ban the Atomizer, but if the Atomizer is not banned, then I don't want to ban the Liberty Launcher. Liberty Launcher definitely has a strength to soldiers, and I think if you allow the Atomizer and you allow the Liberty Launcher, those kind of balance out a little bit. We'll see, though. I like to use the Liberty Launcher as well. You lose a rocket, and I think that means that you know, you can't really jump as much because you jump into the air and immediately you only have two rockets loaded instead of 3 rockets. So I think that's, you know, I mean, that's a large part of the competitive game. You know, is jumping in on people and bombing people. So I think that downside of Liberty Launcher is really important. And it's definitely a buff to soldiers. It makes it harder for some classes to get away from the soldier due to the faster rocket damage, rocket speed, and the splash damage. It's a continually evolving game, and I would like to see the Liberty Launcher allowed, but you know, I'm not making the votes or the calls in this situation. Reserve shooter is banned, which some people definitely feel like it is too powerful with the mid-air shots. And I haven't actually played against it a whole lot, so I'm not. I still think it's overpowered, but maybe it is not. It only has 3 bullets, so that's definitely a disadvantage. Disciplinary action is banned, and that is mainly banned because people don't want to see heavies whipped to the middle fight. You know, the competitive players don't really like playing against heavies because they slow down the game quite a bit. And I think if you had Liberty Launcher soldiers, that's a lot easier to kill a heavy with and focus them from afar. Yeah, you know, it's understandable. I think it brings out good strategies and stuff. And, you know, some people complain about the equalizer, and I think that that would be a good balance, you know, to get rid of the equalizer and get the disciplinary action in there. Because the disciplinary action, you know, you can retreat when you're with somebody, you know, but you have to make that conscious decision of like, well, if your weapons are reloaded, you know, then you're reloaded, but you have to say, well, I need to put away my weapons, I need to not reload, I need to whip somebody, and we need to get the hell out of here. And I think that's cool, you know, that's your partner, and I think also it can be really cool, you know, of like you're about to Uber and you're like, okay, cool, we're about to Uber, whip, 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 you know, like let's run. And I think that's cool and neat, but certainly people are a little worried that whipped heavies to middle will be overpowered. So that's why that's still banned. We see it in Highlander, and that's pretty fun. And then the Gunslinger, yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up again, the Frontier Justice. Very sad that the Gunslinger is banned. You know, the Engineer limit is 2, and I think that's still staying in place next season. I double-checked a little bit, but let me just pull that up again. Yep, so still 2 Engineers, 1 Heavy, 1 Demo Man, 1 Medic. And, you know, 2 Engineers running the Gunslinger is kind of a tough strategy to deal with, and it's kind of an obnoxious troll strategy, but, you know, if you have really solid players, you should be able to overcome that. And if you were getting beat anyways, and then they start rolling, you know, 2 Gunslinger Engineers, that's annoying, but they were kind of beating you anyways. So, you know, they're just being obnoxious. That's not really overpowered. I don't really know why the Gunslinger was banned. You know, there were some engineers, particularly Braylum, who X-Television casted, that had very powerful Gunslinger strategies. But I think it's really exciting, and it brings a lot of flair to the game. It brings a lot of diversity. And, you know, if we look at the top level of play even, because this is, we have to admit, this is where the ban was put in place. We had Enigma placing mini sentries around Gravel Pit, and that was a strategy that, in my opinion, wasn't really working most of the time. And I think it's really awesome that Enigma was doing that and was exploring it, and he had tried it out obviously in the past. This couldn't have been the first time he did it, but you know, it was a new strategy that we hadn't seen before. He was exploring different options, exploring different routes, and now he can't do that. And the Gunslinger was, you know, is such a great tool for the engineer, and I don't know, it's really sad to see that removed, and I think a lot of people were disappointed in that ban. And, you know, with the Jag bans and the Gunslinger bans, the Engineer is going to have a smaller role in competitive 6v6 this season for ESEA. And I think that's just how it is. You know, they have the Widowmaker, but the Jag and the Gunslinger are great tools. And I don't really think that we saw that abusive of Engineer strategies. So I'm a little disappointed in those changes, but, you know, that's how it goes. Let me see if there's, and I guess what I meant about the Frontier Justice, what I was bringing the Frontier Justice in about that, was that, you know, that was a big combination. And it's kind of like, now that the Frontier Justice is banned, then I also see that the Gunslinger is kind of in a weaker situation there. Because before, you could throw the Gunslinger down wherever, and then you could run away, you get an assist, you get a kill, and you have crits on your shotgun. You know, now that they don't have the Frontier Justice, and they can't, you know, put the Gunslinger down, then run around a corner and crit shoddy a bunch of people, Engineer's not going to be as powerful. Yeah, anyways, let's move on from that. I am really glad that the sandwiches are banned. I feel like a heavy having 150 health, and then or let's say he has 450 health. You walk in to granary last, granary wherever, last wherever. You take the heavy down. You throw 350 points of damage at him. He's down to 100 health. That's one meat shot away from dying. Pretty vulnerable, still to a good amount of damage from other players. He throws the sandwich on the ground, steps on it, and a second later he's back up to 250 health. I just think that's too much damage that you have to put on the heavy. You have to put on 600 damage to kill him, and it's a little ridiculous. Throwing out the sandwich for his teammates and stuff is cool, but maybe the heavy needs to throw away the sandwich that he wasn't going to eat, and he can't pick up his own sandwich, or maybe it needs to heal for less health. I just think the sandwich is too crazy. It's too crazy. The other item that was banned that I was really disappointed was banned. And this is the last item I'm going to talk about. Okay, maybe I just lied. Let's break it up real quick. Solemn Vow. Very disappointed that was banned. You can see enemy health. You can communicate it. But there's basically other ways to know the enemy health, such as players communicating about how much damage they did. So you lose the Uber Saw and Solemn Vow. I don't really see why that should be banned. Again, I didn't do the votes. I don't know what the players were thinking. Yeah, whatever. We're moving on with our lives. Jarate is banned, and I am disappointed in the ban of the Jarate. Especially because I used to always use Jarate, and then I switched over to submachine gun, and I was like, man, submachine gun is a bit more helpful than Jarate. But the Jarate, you can land that Jarate, and you can soak an enemy team, and they're in a very tough spot. I can see why some players wanted to ban it, and those reasons are, you Jarate the demo man, you Jarate the soldier. They can't jump in on you. They take a risk. It is almost a little unfair that you could be in an evenly matched situation. You walk in, you tag the enemy team with a Jarate, and then they have to run. They have to abandon the point. But I think the Jarate is, it's kind of a tough weapon to land, and you actually give up, the SMG, which is really good for your own protection. Also, the sniper is just a class that we don't see. We never see the sniper. We see him on Viaduct, but we don't see him on Granary mid. We don't see him on mid fights of many matches, except for maybe Freight. That's just kind of how it goes. So I'm disappointed to lose the Jarate because I feel like that's going to make it so snipers run a little less often. But I guess it will probably be good for the flow of the game and stuff that there is no Jarate in effect. I'm just going to talk real quick about the map list as well. You know what? Actually, why don't we just cut that off right here, and I'll just start a new one because man, that was a long one. 23 minutes. Thanks for staying tuned. Unlock's always a tricky issue, but it's important to talk about. Important that you guys know what the bans are, what's happening, and I don't know. Moving forward, it's not vanilla. That's what I like, but vanilla TF2 is still a good way to play, and I think the American teams are still going to be really strong at playing in vanilla style if they need to in some sort of future international competition. Maybe. Anyways, guys, stay tuned for more ESEA preseason breakdown. Thanks for watching.